So if you're like me, you like checking out awesome channels that talk about things like electronic music, using Super Collider, playing the violin, aesthetics, artistic value, and maybe even a little bit of film critique. Sound Engraver, whose channel is linked below in the description of this video, is someone that has been making content like that for a couple of years now and has really grown a wonderful channel with a great following. I reached out to her to see if she would be willing to have a conversation with me about her approaches to technology and art and aesthetics, as well as creating online content for YouTube, and luckily she was kind enough to agree. The following is an interview with Sound Engraver, but please make sure you check out her channel and see what she is up to as well. It is some great stuff. Thank you very much for being here and taking the time to talk with me. I appreciate it. So I have a few questions for you today to get to know a little bit about you and your artistic process and your online presence. So I discovered your channel about a year ago as a fellow electronic music creator, Super Collider user, and violinist. And I'm also friends with Eli Fieldsteel, who makes some of the best Super Collider content on YouTube. I was actually his TA for a year, going back a few years ago when I was still in grad school. And basically it's no wonder that YouTube started recommending your videos to me. So I'm curious, what is it that led you to creating your channel, and what has been your experience so far with generating this sort of content?
Yes, absolutely. With YouTube in particular, I saw it at first as, well, this is a great platform. It's free to use. I'd like more exposure this way, just showing people publicly what I'm doing with electronic music, maybe more for mainstream, but also tapping into that experimental side that I had learned from the University of Washington and also the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So it was more of a business venture than anything.
Absolutely. So how do you view your music in the continuum of experimental versus mainstream? Like, where do you think you sort of fit in there?
That's a great question. Right now, the music that I've produced and released on places like Bandcamp, it's also on Spotify, also on SoundCloud, those are more upbeat, and those more that more upbeat kind of mainstream catchy music, electronic music still has my own instruments and my own sounds and my own, colors and timbre there. But that's actually a result of just learning the process. Because for about 4 to 5 years after getting my master's in Wisconsin, I completely retreated from the academia. And then about 2 years in, I was practicing violin, and then for 15 minutes, I went totally experimental. And actually, I'm so glad I didn't know you're a violinist. That's great. But I went totally experimental to that freestyle improvisation that I did back in Milwaukee. And I thought I wanted to do mainstream. I still want to do, when I say mainstream, I mean more outside the academics as far as electronic. But after that improvisation, just in my living room, I said, no, I really do have to get back into the experimental music, just where I've grown up with in terms of the university setting, and especially from being so heavily influenced by people in Seattle, composers in residence, people working in DX Arts over there in Seattle, and knowing all these computer music figures. And so I thought, well, yes, I love electronic music. I've always loved electronic music. I just didn't know how to do it. And I've always been fascinated with Super Collider because we did have that in Seattle. That's where I learned Super Collider. I did fail I got a 2.1 the first class, and then I knew I was going to fail the second class, so I decided to just pull out. And so I thought, no, Super Collider's not for me. But then I thought, no, I kind of want to learn this again. I remember learning, just for fun, just for self-enrichment, I took a free Stanford online JavaScript class. It was, 6 weeks of free education. I said, no, well, that's cool. And I just wanted to do something new. And then I was looking at the script and very basic things. I'm not a programmer, but I thought, wow, this looks like Super Collider. I remember this in Super Collider. So I thought, why don't I just try Super Collider? This is outside school and all of that. So that's really started, taking off, especially practicing every day, and especially Eli Fieldsteel's invaluable channel. I would not be where I am in Super Collider without that channel, without his instruction.
Same here, and I don't use it as much as I used to. Largely because what I try to focus on is what I'm teaching, and if I'm not teaching something, I have a hard time kind of staying up on it because there's so much stuff out there. So in terms of you've been doing, let's see, when did you start your channel? A couple years ago at this point now?
Yeah, that will be September of 2018, so almost 2 years.
Any major surprises or things you weren't expecting since you've started your channel?
Not really. I knew I wanted to do Super Collider and Logic Pro. Those were the two platforms I was working in. And so that there are two sides of people are more interested in Logic Pro, but again, there are massive channels on Logic Pro out there. So my most popular views are Super Collider. There's one where I have a 3-part series for constructing rhythm using pbind and pbind-def, the unit generators. And I'm glad it's garnered so many views and interests, and people have commented saying, "Oh, I'm so glad I found your channel." The one thing I regret, though, is I was fairly new in doing YouTube. And see, I work with an iMac, a 21-inch desktop. And so I was working with pretty, small code because I didn't need it. It was right in front of me. And then I look at my YouTube videos and the code is like this big, and I just can't stand it. But and those are the most popular videos. Now I will say I'm still doing the majority of my videos on Super Collider, not just with sound synthesis. I'm actually just at the basics of sound synthesis. I'm learning myself, so I don't really have a lot of videos on sound synthesis yet. But that is definitely my endeavor. I have been really enjoying doing MIDI protocol and sending MIDI messages back and forth between Super Collider and Logic Pro. That's been really, really fun. So I'm actually building more scores. In fact, the video I'm going to record for my YouTube channel tomorrow is going to have just an updated draft of a MIDI score. So I've been working with MIDI primarily. A surprise actually has been not so much, popularity or anything, but I've actually started becoming involved with this community of actually comic book fans and people who love superheroes and stories. And I'm a Star Wars fan, so people have started knowing my channel from that community as well. Didn't intend that, but I started doing collaborations with a channel called Professor Geek, and he is a professor, but he also specializes in that content, the superhero content. So that's actually, I didn't expect it. I just rolled with it. In a year like this, you just roll with things, and so it's just sure.
Cool. Well, that's really great, and I'm sure more surprises and unexpected things are going to happen, and hopefully they continue to be good things. So what would you say, and this could be classical, it could be electronic, or really anything in between, but what would you say some of your major artistic and aesthetic influences are?
Yes, I always point to the record label Ultime Records. I actually, that's how I pronounce them, but I'm happy to type in the chat too. But Ultime Records is a group of sound designers and composers. They're based really in many areas, but France, Scandinavia, Russia, Greece, UK, just to name a few regions. And I think there are over a dozen of these artists under this record label. And a couple that I have been, a few of them that have really stood out to me is Solar Fields is one. And also Martin on Static and A.S. Dana and all these people that really use very experimental tones. And they design these tones. They are sound designers and put them in more of a darker ambient context. That has really helped me actually as a writer, because I also write science fiction, and so that kind of music really just helps the world building just kind of blossom. And so I've been greatly inspired by these people, greatly inspired by these composers over there. And I would like to do something like that. I would like to do that using Super Collider because of sound synthesis. So even though I'm just even after 5 years of practicing in Super Collider, just at the basics of sound synthesis, I'm thinking, wow, once I really understand the capacity and the flexibility, I can do a lot of these, generate a lot of these sounds that I'm hearing from my favorite artists. So more, as far as experimental electronic music, more of that ambient, what they also call down tempo. You may have heard also, I believe it's IDM. It might be called is it intellectual dance music or intelligent?
I always heard intelligent, but it wouldn't shock me if maybe people say both because they kind of
Right.
hinted the same thing. Yeah.
So it's kind of that where they do use more experimental tones, but it does garner an audience because I think it's personally attractive, musically speaking.
I agree. And as pretentious as the term IDM is, there are some great people under that sort of term. I wish I could have been in the room when someone came up with that term and maybe discouraged them, like who thought, my music is intelligent. I really think that just about anything would have been better as a way to describe that. But it's utilitarian and it works. And I think we kind of get what's going on under that label.
Right.
So you've hinted to this at some extent so far with some of the things we've been talking about, but a question I always like to ask people is, what is it that you value in art, whether it's something you've created or something that someone else has created and you're, viewing that. So you experience some kind of complete artistic artifact and you think to yourself, well, I appreciate X, Y, and Z about this. Are there things that come to mind for you that sort of categorically fit that bill?
Well, excuse me. The first thing I always look to for the experience or seeing a piece of art, whether it's music or any other art form, is quality. And if it's produced with excellence, even if it's as we say, genre or art form or a style I'm not into, if it's well done, I have every reason to appreciate it. I do look for that. I'm a violin teacher as my source of income, and I look for quality. I look for practice. I look for the ability to produce after practice. It's not to say you can't explore or do things haphazardly. That's kind of the contrast that I have, that maybe my view of experimental electronic music might be versus other people, because we'll say, "Oh, you're experimenting." Well, anything goes. Well, I've done a lot of anything goes in my music, and it's not great. So I do really value things produced masterfully, and even if that takes time, or even if that's your goal and it just doesn't come out quite right, I'm still going to appreciate that as well. And I do favor beauty. I even with all the great composers that we learn in our education and their value in music history, breaking from tonality, for instance, or exploring new forms. I think there's a place in history for that. I think that's great. But I'm trying to work where I've learned all that, but trying to bring it back to something. We use the word aesthetics, something that is attractive and people saying it pleasing to the eye, but also pleasing to the ear. And you can have harshness and dichotomies and all of that stuff you learn. But I want to bring experimentalism in a place where there is quality and excellence and beauty. But that also goes for me seeing other forms of art as well.
What in your mind equals quality or high degree of craft? Because those terms, I think I get kind of what it is that you might mean, but they could mean very different things for some people. So if a piece demonstrates those to you, could you offer more specific terms of what that really means to you?
Yes, I think the best way to approach that is being objective with quality. So that can mean a number of things. So you're a violinist and I'm a violinist, and so we have an understanding of what good violin playing is with practice, with listening, attending a symphony or a concert, and all of that. So I would say the artist would have to reference what has been established before as exceptional. I don't know what I would give as in terms of specific examples. For me, I just love experimental music that includes wonderful harmony, and harmony has long been established in our music history, and so that I guess that would be one example. There's something, or the bass line. If it has a solid bass line, or even better, I've heard electronic music not only with a fantastic bass, but the sound of the bass, like the actual sound of the bass is just high quality. It's the best. It couldn't have been better. Have you ever experienced that? Yeah. So I think if we look back to what has been established before, and then we can model after that, or we can take from that, or we can disregard it and try something new. But I think, and it's my personal belief, and if people disagree, that's fine. I actually do believe that every human being has the innate ability, even on a small scale, the innate ability to understand what good art is. I know people say, well, no, I don't know anything about this art, or I'm not into art and stuff like that. But I actually do believe it doesn't really have to move you, but I think people can understand, at least on a basic level, what can be good art, or what can move some person. If an art piece doesn't move me in particular, but someone else, I can understand why. Maybe not to me, but we all receive it differently. That's for sure.
So in the couple of years that you've been doing this, you've reached nearly 1,000 subscribers, which
Oh,
is really
good.
wonderful. And your channel has really grown into something great with a lot of wonderful content. What advice do you have for others creating YouTube content or who are pursuing similar endeavors?
The first thing I would say is start as specific as possible. So if it is content on Super Collider, I think that's very valuable. You don't want to go all over the map. I think with my content, between what I'm doing with Super Collider and Logic Pro, that's enough of a balance. And I also do live commentary on art on Monday nights. And I've been branching out to that community a little bit more. But that's after 2 years of doing just only Super Collider and Logic Pro. I would say consistency. I would start with a time of the week. And people say, oh no, just do once a week. I'd actually focus on a day. So people will always expect something on Thursday from me. Even if the upload is too long and I have to go to work, it will be that night. So definitely pick a day. People love that frequency, but they also love, I'm expecting this today on Thursdays or Monday nights, whatever the case may be. And yeah, niche, and then consistency. I would say just generally have fun and relax and just kind of be yourself. You get all these YouTube videos that are saying, you got to be authentic and then you got to do this. And it's like, oh, of course, be authentic, but just like you're talking now, as natural as it comes. My favorite YouTube videos involve commentary where I feel like I'm just sitting in the room with them and just having a discussion. That's my favorite kind of content. Now that might be me, but as long as it's educational, which coming from a professor, I'm sure that's the case, and just kind of relaxing and having a fun time and having fun with yourself. If you make a mistake, and like I sometimes I'll make a mistake in Super Collider or make an error and I laugh. Because I find it funny, but so yeah, just kind of have fun with it. I think people will respond much more naturally to that.
So one last big picture question, and then one small follow-up. But I'm really curious, what motivates you to create art at all? And let me preface by saying that look at all the art already out there, right? Like someone wants to write for orchestra, and I might say, well, Mahler
Right.
already happened. So how do you justify entering that arena? And I think there's some amount of ego involved in creating art, because we're basically saying, the world needs me, right? And I think that can be challenging sometimes. And we have to reconcile with that when we're adding art to this already massive web of art that just is out there and is being created currently.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, how do you stay motivated to make art? And what might be one of your core motivators in the first place, just to even start at all?
The first thing I have is I just enjoy doing it. I've told family members saying I could do this for the rest of my life without making a dime, and I'll still do it because I love it so much. Now, I do actually would love to begin selling my music. I have some releases and albums, and I'll charge like a few dollars for it. And so I would love to do it as a business as well, and continue that, continue going with that. But I just love it so much anyway. This is probably a very non-academic answer. I produce music I enjoy, so music that brings delight, and it's just nothing like, there's nothing like hearing someone say, "Oh, that was wonderful. That made my day," or something like that. I love that. So I've actually been more, even though I really still want to, home in on the experimental side. I really do love producing things that brings delight to people, and that's the thing for me. Now on motivation, I've actually done a commentary video and a live stream on why you shouldn't stay motivated. So I've got content on that. But the thing is, I actually just do it because I have to. It's out of a necessity, really. It is good for me as an artist, but being productive even in the smallest capacity, on the smallest scale, is actually just really good for the human spirit. And so I would encourage people to look at first what it is they want to do specifically. Maybe they have some ideas what they're told they ought to do, and maybe they want to reconsider that. And this may, I can understand where people might not like this idea, but I actually produce music to serve people, just to make people happy, or inspire. As my favorite artists have inspired world building for me in my fiction, I would love to do something like that for someone else. So I think those are the main things. Doing something you enjoy, and I would say particular, do something you enjoy, because even in the thick of it, it's really hard. Even when you enjoy it, it's so hard. I'm actually in this project where I'm just about done. Like I gotta get this released because I'm so tired of editing it. So that's so important. If you don't enjoy it, the work will be even worse, because you'll have some of that work where you just don't want to do that work, but you have to. So encouraging people, the best thing to do also, as far as advice, is to complete the structure first, and then do all the fun stuff like instrumentation and building your own instruments and sounds and stuff like that. But or not, maybe it's just generating all the sound synthesis in one massive 50-minute recording and then doing something with it.
I can tell you, I would agree. I would err on the side of structure as well. That's very much my approach to things. I am a planner when it comes to artistic creation. Last question, just sort of for fun. And you already mentioned, that you're a sci-fi fan, but what are some other things that you do outside of all this that contribute to a healthy, creative self?
Absolutely. Yeah, the first thing is writing for me, and I'm also reading. I'm reading Dune right now, the first book of Dune. So, and I'm such a, people say, well, you're a science fiction fan. This isn't really my first time reading Dune, but it's my first time reading it all the way through, because with moving and stuff like that, I never got to finish it. So that's been a joy. So reading fiction, reading a little bit of nonfiction in the mornings with scriptures and all that, and also because of this pandemic that we're facing, I've been doing a lot more YouTube collaborations, and so what we've been doing is on the Professor Geek channel in the community, and the channels that are linked to his, we've been doing rewatches of classic films. So we've done like a 2-month stint on film noir, so like classic 1940s films, great stuff. And I did actually a rewatch of Disney's Fantasia, and did live commentary 2 Saturdays ago. So it's a constant YouTube collaboration and community, and it's a lot of fun. And I think we just need to have as much fun as we possibly can in these circumstances, and have a lot of joy. And I don't know about you. Well, I mean, you're a professor, so you're in the thick of all this work. But I've kind of taken a step back artistically too, thinking, what do I want that's really going to personally enrich me, even if it takes me, another 5 years to learn and to show people. What would be enriching in that way. So that's an encouragement to you too, is just do something with YouTube or your art that you also enjoy too, because you're going to need that buffer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that is very good advice. And like as I sort of mentioned, that's really all the questions I had for you. So I do want to thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me today. To any of you watching on my channel, please make sure you subscribe to Sound Engraver's channel. It's really wonderful, and check out some of her content. So there you have it. I'm looking forward to future collaborations with Sound Engraver. And if you haven't already, please do be sure to check out her channel and subscribe. She's making some really wonderful stuff. Make sure you check out what it is she's doing. And hopefully you can draw some inspiration for your own artistic and creative practices.